Welcome back. So I've got a huge amount going on behind the scenes with this build. We're moving forward, we're making progress. In this episode you'll see we're back on the spoiler, we're getting that finalised, we need to move forward with that. Lots of other bits and pieces, bit of bog work going on. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget, subscribe, it helps with what we're doing with our sponsors and moving forward with the program and making sure we bring the best we can to you. So I've moved back onto the bonnet because I need to get this outside edge straightened up. So the other week I showed you where Darren was welding the back edge up so we can fill all that back. And what that does is tends to pull, and you can see how that outside edge is just holding away from the shape. And over this side, you can see where I've actually been along and straightened that again now. So I've got that outside edge, and you can see the ruler sitting up here. So it has got a curve in it. But what I'm looking for is it doesn't come across and then fall away at the end, because it should be sort of flat out on the end. So that's the flat I'm talking about, and then it'll have that curvature for the factory shape, but won't pull away on the end. So to pull the edge down, I'm just using a normal flat dolly and a hammer with a flat face on it. So I grind these down and put a bit of a radius on that outside edge so that you don't end up putting the kiss mark all the time from the hammer on the edge. It's got a little bit of a radius on there. So I'm just going to put that underneath, and I want to take the load, but at the same token I need to get this outside edge down. So it's a bit of a double whammy. I'm trying to stretch the panel a little bit, but more so push this edge down because that weld has pulled it up. So I'll just show you. Now, one of the things that I don't think about when I do it is if you're going to do this sort of work, you need to get yourself well supported in your legs, nice wide stance, so that when you're doing it, you can control the hammer, because as you're doing this, if you're sort of standing here like this, you can't get the control. You can if you can get down and sort of lock your shoulders and all in so that you can actually support what you're doing. Because I've got to hold this up and then swing this down. Now that is putting a couple of small marks in that. If you bring that down and have a look, you'll see here where I'm hitting that with the hammer. And I'm trying not to do that obviously, but it's going to happen. But because we're going to sand that up and then put a skim of filler on there, I'm not overly fussed about it because I need to get it straight. So just got to keep at it. So we're getting to the final end of this bumper bar. So the bracketry on this, we'll get down this end first. So this one here is pretty much the standard one. This is normally welded onto here and onto here, spot welded from the factory. And as I showed you last week, we've released all the spot welds. And the reason we're doing that is because we've changed the shape of the bumper and the curvature, and I need it to go back together and enable us to put it together in a relaxed fit. So what we've done there is, this one's already started being cleaned up, but we're putting a bolt through this area here. And if we come down to this one that's just about finished, you can see here there's a bolt here, and I'll take that off in a minute and just show you what we've done there. Cleaned up all these brackets, just the edges, and you can see how that's just starting to get a really nice clean look about it. And that's because we've taken all the rough edges off. You can see here where this has been trimmed down nice and smooth, so where that had all the little chunks out of it and the steps in it, we've actually just run a scribe line down there, just run the 40 grit down it, and then this has had to be welded up where we've moved the holes, because we've actually moved the bumper back into the car. So all of those little modifications keep making changes. These ends have been trimmed back, and I'll show you that on the car shortly. So if I just should be able to undo this. So what Darren's done there is put a hole in there and weld a nut in from the back, and that'll enable us to put the bumper on the way it is there now, and then put this bracket in afterwards. and have adjustment on this end and fixed on that end. So that'll still act as a nice brace for the corner, and at the same time enable us to put it in with a nice relaxed feel about it and not be sort of putting tension on things. So the last piece of this corner of the front guard, so we've just got to fill that in because we've made all this, and now we're just putting the bottom in it. So it's all been fitted up so that it'll go back on correctly, and hopefully it's almost done. So the front of the car is starting to really get that look that we want. And we've got, you know, the guards, I think, where they're going to stay now. So I've made the decision with Darren that we'll actually tech screw those down. Now I haven't done this before, so we've got a bit of a flat area here. You can see we've got a hole drill. So the idea is we're just going to use some fine thread tech screws, and that we'll put one there and one up here in an area where we can weld the hole up quite simply. And the idea there is I've still got to do some gaps. I've got a little bit of panel work to do, a bit of straightening to do through this guard, and then I've got to finalise the gaps. So one of the issues when you're doing this sort of work is you get it how you think you want it, and then you take the guard off and you do some work and you never seem to be able to get it back to where it was before, which gets really frustrating. So I haven't done it before. Life's a change all the time, I guess, so I've just decided that I'm going to tech screw it on, and that way as I take them on and off they'll go back 100% in the same position. So we're trying to progress the front of the car. So we've got the guards in place now, the grille, the bumper's almost complete, but before we finish the bumper I wanted to work how we're going to do with the spoiler. So way back we had this front spoiler which is a standard Cobra spoiler, and the Cobras had two versions. They had the one that came out on the majority, the 370 standard Cobras, and then the race version had a smaller, not quite so wide, not quite so deep spoiler that I believe came out on the original cars that was fiberglass, and all the rest of them were plastic. So this particular one is an eBay version of the plastic one. So my intention is to cut it down a bit for a couple of reasons. One is I like that tighter look of the one that came off the Bathurst 30, but we've also modified the guards and the bumper, so I need to sort of take that into consideration. So I've set it up with my height here pretty much as per original. So there's normally a piece of fiberglass comes out and bolts to the underside of the bumper. So this is pretty much how the standard one would have been. And then as we come around the side here, you'll actually see where we've shortened this guard. So this guard's been moved forward 30 mil, so about to here, and you know, these are always a bit of a how you going type of fit. And this was the standard style cutout that they had. And on the Cobras I've done, I normally have to modify this to get it to look nice. So the bumper's been cut and moved in, this has been changed, but the shape should be the same. So now what we're looking to do is to get the bumper and all to match. So if we go over the other side, you'll see what we've done over here. So we've taken a section out of here and obviously cleccated it together and moved it way back in under the bumper and tightened it up, which is a way better look. And then I'm looking that I've just slotted the back of this so that I could bend it around like that in the fiberglass, but I'm going to probably trim it down through here, and then obviously it'll need to be extended to be able to pick up. I've cut too much off that at the moment, so I need to extend that back out in fiberglass and put the little return on it so that it can screw into the end of the guard. So trying to get that nice tight look and make it look sort of factory, but at the same token a little bit tighter, a little bit neater, and a bit more usable, because they tended to be quite nasty on the road and the curb, which means you're going to write them off when you give them a tap. So following on, this is a point now where we're pretty much done. The bumper's fitted. I'm really happy the way it's looking. It sort of looks stock, but I'm going to dig out a photo and put one up that shows exactly how much different it is, because it's substantially different. And the spoiler's now sitting where we want it. So I've been over and grabbed a fiberglass kit, and we'll now join these together and make sure that's straight so that we can go the next phase to get it mounted. So I've got to add some fiberglass mounts up in here that bolts onto the bumper bar bracket like factory. So I'll get that done because I need to pull this thing apart and get the body finished and get some paint on it. So I just thought I'd show you something here that probably most people wouldn't want to show you, but as you can tell, this bonnet's been sanded up, pretty much ready for another coat of epoxy because I'm all but done with that. And me being me, I've left it too long and it's been sitting around the shed. So the edge here where I've run the Scotch-Brite over after I was panel beating the other day was absolute bare metal. So it's been a few days, probably nearly a week, and it's all started to rust. And I just wanted to show you that because people always ask about, I've got panels in bare metal all the time. The ones that you see in bare metal like this one, the reason they're not rusting is I've treated them with the dioxidine. And the dioxidine I use is a PPG product that's made by Henkel and it's distributed by PPG distributors, and it puts a coating on, a phosphoric coating, and they don't rust as quickly. They still will rust, especially if you've got your hands and you're putting them all over it. So now this panel, I'm going to have to Scotch-Brite that all off and dioxidine before I can prime it up. PPG. I've been using PPG for as long as I can remember. Remembering I'm a sort of 1 car a year guy now, and prior to that was about every 3 years. And because of that, I've always stuck with a premium product, and these guys have been really good in support to be able to help me to know how to go down the process. And obviously over the years now, I've got to a stage where I trust the product, but also understand the process and how it all works. So this particular product I've got here, this is the one, the green that you see on the car, this colour here. So that's the only paint I really use right up until we get to the paint stage. So it's an epoxy urethane primer. It's designed to go over bare metal. It seals the metal off, keeps the rust away, and it needs to be under everything. So regardless of where it is, underneath, engine bay, on the outside of the car, it needs to be sealed up with epoxy. It's important when you're using this sort of stuff. These are available just through Google. They're the data sheets from PPG, and it'll tell you exactly what you can and can't do with the product. I often get people asking me comments about, you know, how do I do this, what do I do with that? It's all listed on here and tells you all about it. One of the big things I find with it that I like is that at 25 degrees, this dries in 25 minutes. So if you're using normal hardener, normal thinner, 25 minutes after you apply it, you can then put body filler or spray putty straight over the top of it. So if you're working on a panel and you've got some cut throughs, you can blow a bit of this on it, and 30 minutes later you can put more filler over it. So I try and work towards lunch and then put some on at lunch, before lunch, come back after lunch and can go straight over the top of it. The other little trick is, and the reason I've got the slow thinner here, is if you're going to leave a panel for a while, if you've got most of your work done and you want it to look nice, if you use the slow thinner, it tends to lay down a lot nicer and doesn't sort of have that dry look about it. So if you want it to come out nice and be presentable when it's sitting around the shed, or if you're doing videos like we are, then the slow thinner is a good trick. So PPG make this one. This is in their Vibrance range, but they also have a PPG 2K epoxy urethane primer. It's in one of their other ranges. I don't use it because I like to stay with the one. So if I'm using Vibrance, I use Vibrance. If I'm using Deltron, I use Deltron. The other 2K is more cost effective, but I don't believe it's nice to work with, but it's another option. So if you're looking for a quality product, PPG's the place to go, and they have a couple of different options with the epoxies. So another little thing we've been working on, and at the moment I'm sort of in that mixed area of trying to work out which bit to get done and how we get it done. We're about to look in the next 2 to 3 weeks to do our torsional rigidity test. So Dr. Tim's going to come down and do that first week of March. So we've got to get this car off this frame and get it onto a structure so that we can do that testing, and I'll tell you some more about that next program. But at the same time, I've had another guy coming in and give me a bit of a hand with some of the filler work. So we've started doing the areas I know that are finished. So all through here now, we've got that first cut in there and across the back. So this was new old stock. This piece down here was one of the ones we sell a rare spares part. And then this one here was a new one, once again another one that we have on our list. And with an XC, this part normally is separate to that panel, so it's normally spot welded by memory on the original XC. So I've actually welded all that in, and what we've done now is actually put a skim of filler in there, and we're just squaring up edges. And when we finished yesterday, I just put a bit of epoxy on it to seal it up so I don't have that rust problem. And you can see here now where this is starting to get that nice shape where everything's going to fit around. So I'll get the boot back on and make sure our lines are all good, and then we can start putting some filler in the quarters as well. Okay, the underside, so you can see a bit of filler and stuff on here over the top of the primer. That's because we did this side first and got it primed up, and I've done that so that it can sit, the fillers can dry, and the primer, so it's got 3 coats of the Vibrance High Build, and I'm going to let that dry out completely, put a black trace on it, block it out, and that'll all happen down the track because I want to get it back on, get all my gaps finalised, get the filler work on the quarters done, and then this can go in and get some primers ready for paint.